Good evening. I'm Jonathan Higgins,
I'm Rich Carlson.
and we are the Scanner Guys, and we're live this evening from coast to coast and worldwide on the Scanner Guys YouTube account. So, good evening, everyone. We hope that you're having a great Wednesday. Um,
It's Wednesday already?
yes, Wednesday. This is the last Wednesday of the month. Let me see. There we go. The
I
last
think it's
Wednesday of the month. So, I can't believe that the whole month has gone by really fast.
yeah. It's like all of a sudden it's October tomorrow. And it's like, where did summer go? Of
Yeah.
course, everybody being stuck inside that makes time fly. I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's for sure. Time does fly
Yeah.
really fast, especially in this time of, with the coronavirus and everything.
Yep. So looks like my audio is real low and yours is, or my audio is real high and yours is low. So I'm going to turn my volume down a little bit
Yeah, and I
and
will, and I will
yep.
turn mine up.
Not that much.
Well, not that knob either. Here
yeah.
we go.
Yeah.
So anyway, good evening, everybody. I'm Jonathan Higgins, along with Rich Carlson. In case you couldn't hear us because of the audio, let's dive into tonight's show.
You got it. Scanner magazines.
Yeah, this should be a good topic for tonight. If
Yep.
you're a follower of the various scanner magazines that were out, definitely check out this show. You're going to see some of the magazines that are still well, they're not really published anymore to a
Uh,
degree.
yeah, they're not printed anymore. There's a couple that are web magazines now, and obviously there were some magazines that used to be done print in the past, and even some web magazines that are gone now too. So there's still a couple of them that are still out there and they're still working.
Yeah, so we're going to definitely take a look at some of those tonight. So let's dive into this presentation right now. Oh, what is this?
Hey, it's election season.
Yes, so you can vote for your favorite scanner guys. These are some of the things that we're going to be running on. Less encryption on the day-to-day operations, investing in our railroads because
Yep,
we're avid rail fans,
you
and of
betcha.
course, what do you think for HOAs to be able to have scanner antennas?
I'm all for that. I live in an HOA. I want to have a 100-foot tower in my backyard. I don't want my neighbors to have a 100-foot tower, but I want one in my yard.
Yeah,
So,
that's for sure.
yeah. Did you see Dale's remark there? Our roadies didn't check the audio.
No, our roadies did not check the audio. So, yeah, we an interesting start of the broadcast. So,
yeah.
yeah, our roadies did not check the audio. Hopefully, um, our roadies will have to talk to them a little bit more about
Yeah.
checking our audio. So let's continue on. So that's a little funny slide that we decided to throw in there. Higgins Carlson 2020 ticket. We'll be looking out for you, scanner enthusiasts.
That's right.
We just want to remind you, if you've already owned an SDS 100 or 200, that
Yeah.
you can purchase an SD card replacement. This is a great thing with
Yeah.
SD cards.
Yeah, if you've got a zip code type scanner and you don't have a Windows computer to do your own updates and stuff, we can do it for you. And you don't have to send the radio to us. We can do all the programming on an SD card. It's a brand new heavy duty SD card. We'll do all the programming on that for the county or counties that you choose and send it to you. It takes about a week or 10 days for you to get it from the time you order it. Then all you got to do is take the old SD card out, put the new SD card in, turn the radio on, and let her rip.
It sounds like a hokey pokey. Put the SD card in, take it out,
Yeah,
shake it all about.
speaking all about that's about it. That's about as close as I can get to dancing.
Yeah, so even if you don't own the STS 100 or 200, you can certainly replace your SD card for the Home Patrol 1, the Home Patrol 2, the Home Patrol Oops, that's not a Home Patrol 3 as of yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. The VC 436 and 536 HP. So yeah, this is a great service. We'll give your radio a brand new update of the Canadian and United States database, current firmware on that SD card, and of course, very important, we would create a custom favorites list for your local county, which would include police, fire, and EMS for all the cities and towns within your county. So we'd program that out for you so it's ready to go right out of the box.
Yeah, and the police includes the state police or highway patrol, depending on what you have in your state, as well as the county sheriff and the city and local police.
All right, sounds good, Rich. Sounds good. And we want to remind you, this is the last time you're going to be seeing us on. I lost my mouse. This is going to be the last time you're going to be seeing us on Facebook. So if you're watching us this evening on Facebook, make the switch over to YouTube. You don't even need an account. You just go to the channel and you can watch our live stream right there. If you do have an account, make sure you hit that subscribe button.
Yeah.
So we've got a good show coming up on Monday, October the 5th. It's on the Train Aficionado YouTube channel, and it's going to be scanners for rail fans. We're going to talk about how it's a valued tool. That'll be next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on our other channel, the YouTube, the Train Aficionado YouTube channel. That'll be hosted by myself and Rich Carlson. So make sure you tune in.
Yeah, that'll be a good show. We had a lot of fun doing the first one couple 3 weeks ago, and this coming Monday is going to be another fun show. If you're a rail fan or you want to learn about becoming a rail fan, give us a listen, and we think you'll like it.
All right, so that brings us to our main topic of discussion, scanner magazines past and present. So this was put together by Rich Carlson. You've actually contributed to a lot of these magazines over the years. So you're going to give us a little bit of a history of these radios, not radios, but these magazines. I'm so used to talking about radios and scanner. So let's take a look at this. So Rich, take it away.
Okay. All right. So basically, for scanner magazines, there's been a bunch of different scanner magazines out there. Most of them are gone now, but there are still a couple of them still available. And they went basically from high quality, great information to kind of So most of the print magazines for radio hobbies, and a lot of print magazines have gone away. A lot of them have converted to web access, and some have started as web access only right from the get-go. The internet has really kind of made printed magazines all but extinct, because with the web page, you can, on a web magazine, you can update everything right up until it's made available to the public. Print magazines are typically finalized a couple of weeks before they're printed, and that's the page layout, the article contents and stuff. Distribution takes it another week or so for it to get from the printer to the distributors and then out to the either to the mailing locations or to the book stands. And then the cover dates. So the cover dates tend to be about 1 to 2 months prior to its availability. And so a December dated magazine would be printed about sometime in October, maybe even before, and available at a newsstand around the 1st of November or so. So typically these days, the cover date is the month where they take it off the rack and replace it with the next one. So you're going to be writing your articles for a printed magazine several months in advance. And with a web magazine, it can be done really quick and much more timely. So the web magazines themselves can be printed with much tighter deadlines. They can, and like I said before, they can be finalized minutes before they're making them available on the web. I know of one magazine that did a change the morning of making it available, and that actual change. And I knew that because the news article, the news that was printed in that magazine, just made was just announced that morning. And then it was in the magazine that was made available later on that day. So a web magazine can be finalized right up to the deadline.
It's kind of like the show, I mean, we're tweaking this this slideshow pretty right up to the date, right up to the minute, I should say, before the live broadcast. So
we were making updates to the show to the slideshow. That's why we were 20 seconds late for the show, because we were making a quick change. So.
Yeah, roadies didn't check our mics though, but our mics are all good now. So
we're gonna get new roadies next week. So
roadies will be on the road for some of next week's broadcast. So let's continue on here. Here is some of the history. So it looks like, Rich, we only have 2 that are PDF web versions.
Yeah, and these are the 2 that are most well known for scanner hobbyists that are still around: Spectrum Monitor and National Communications. We'll talk more about the individual ones as we go on tonight. And then there are a bunch of other ones that were very well known, or relatively well known, that have either just gone away and dried up, or just kind of disappeared into the ether and never to be seen of again.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with especially with some of these where it's particularly scanner related. I mean, there's only so much news in the scanner industry. Like if you were a magazine that was to present scanner related news every month, it's I mean, there hasn't been any new products.
Yeah, well, it's a niche hobby, so it's not like there's millions of people that are going to be reading these magazines. It's a relatively limited audience, and the hobby itself is kind of unique, or kind of a niche thing. So you're not going to get that penetration that you would get with a Newsweek, a Time, a Reader's Digest, or even some of the more mainstream hobbies like train watching. There's a lot more rail fans out there than scanner people, and there's 7 or 8 railroad magazines that are published every month, and there's a market for them. There's just not that much of a market for scanner magazines.
Well, did you know that we are the #1 live scanner-only program in the whole world?
Yeah, are we the only one?
As far as I know.
As far as I know,
we're the only live scanner hobbyist show on YouTube.
Yep. So we're #1.
We're #1.
Yeah. We're also last place too, but we won't talk about that.
No, we won't talk about that. So we'll continue on to the next slide. Before I do that, look, some classic scanners on this slide, huh?
Oh yeah, well, it's like a Pro 80. Well, no, it's a was that 246? It looks like a Pro 83 at first, but that's a Uniden. It's what is it? 246.
246T.
WS 1040. BC 780 XLT, and a Pro 2051.
So you get the 780, you've got the GRE PSR 310, and then the Radio Shack one, which that's
the 2051. Yeah, that was the Radio Shack equivalent to the BCT 8, and that one was private labeled by Uniden, and that's another good topic we can do about scanners that were made by one company but labeled for another.
Yes. All right, so let's continue on here. So let's see here. We're going to talk about Spectrum Monitor. Yeah. So this was, not a bad price, Rich. $24.
Yeah, that's $2 an issue when you buy it on an annual basis. This is probably the best one that's still out there. A lot of the guys that wrote for Monitoring Times are involved with the Spectrum Monitor. It's a PDF magazine. Comes out the first of the month every month. It actually usually comes out like a day or two ahead of time. And for $24 a year, it is worth every penny. I haven't written any articles for the Spectrum Monitor. I've been a subscriber since day one, and I've had a couple letters published in it, but I haven't had any articles in it yet. But you can also buy the back issues and such. So I have all of them on PDF, and I do go through them every once in a while. It's a great resource.
Perfect. All right, we'll continue on. National communications.
This one is a little bit less. It's been around for a long time, but it seems to be a little bit less well known. It comes out about 6 times a year. It's $25, and nowadays it's PDF. It used to be printed, and some of the former Popcom guys are involved with this, and it is still a current magazine. They usually have a presence at Dayton. I don't remember seeing them the last time I was there, but I do remember seeing them the last couple of times when we were still at the Hera Arena.
Yes.
The former Hera Arena, which is now a parking lot, probably.
Yeah, that is, that really had some bad luck. It was already crumbling apart, and then there was a tornado that struck down and took out some more of the building, and now it's going to be torn down. So,
yeah, I mean, it should have been torn down 25, 30 years ago.
Wow. All right, we'll continue on here. So this one looks like an old publication. Started in 1975, Rich.
Yeah, I was very much into the RCMA. In fact, that's kind of what got me involved in a lot of other stuff. So the RCMA started in the mid-'70s out in LA, and then it kind of spread nationwide. And there were a couple large local chapters, the LA area and the one that I was involved with in Chicago. And after the RCMA went out of business in 1996, the subscribers were transferred over to Monitoring Times. And some of the former chapters still remain in place as independent clubs. The Southern California Monitoring Association, CARMA, which is the Chicago Area Radio Monitoring Association. This was pretty much the radio reference back in the day. This was like, it wasn't the Scanner Journal. It was more like the Scanner Bible. It was really good.
Let's continue on here and take a look at it. So this one, before we go off this slide, this was, like strictly scanners for the most part.
It was all scanners and only scanners. And it was, it really was the premier organization of scanner listeners in the country. And they had regional columns for just about every place in the country. You got a membership number that was based on the start on the state you're in, and then the sequential number. I was IL 370. I have friends that were IL 12 and IL, and some of the real low numbers. And there was the Captain Bill Maudlin was the president of RCMA, and I've spoke to him a few times. In fact, I spoke to him a few years back, I think, and it was great. I really miss it, and we had some great times.
Yeah, so we'll continue on with the slideshow here. Monitoring Times, I've definitely heard of this one. Owner Bob Grove, which he's well known.
Yeah. I actually have written several articles for Monitoring Times. In fact, this was one of my cover articles, this fire-toned articles from 2006. That was one of the things I was really into at the time. And like I said, I've written several articles for them. A couple of our watchers have written for them. Steve Douglas was one of them. And Grove Enterprises sold scanners, shortwave receivers, antennas, and accessories, and they also did Monitoring Times. And one of the things that they did was when they did reviews, the reviews were straight. even if it was something that they sold or one of their own products, they would tell you the good and the bad about it, and they wouldn't hold back because it was their product or their buddy who made the product or something like that. The reviews on it were straight, so you could trust what they said about that. And they had their catalog every year, which was part of the. I think it was done in the fall for Christmas season.
Yes, I used to get those catalogs.
Yeah, and I would go through that, drool over the stuff that was in there. They started off as a kind of a mimeographed newsletter type of thing, and then pretty quickly moved to like a broadsheet newsprint thing, and it was large format. I mean, it was, I don't know, 18 inches by 12 inches or something like that. It was a larger format that they had to fold to mail it. And
Wow.
then eventually they switched over to more of a magazine format with a slick cover and magazine-sized pages. And then they finally, Bob retired in 2013, and they shut the magazine down. And then right after that is when Spectrum Monitor came out with a lot of the same people and some of the same type of content. So this Firetone articles was my first cover article for them, so that's why I included this picture in. So
that's cool. Popular Communications. This is another one that I've seen.
Yep.
Wow, 1982 and folded in 2013. Wow.
Yeah, so they were around for 30 years. There was the same company that did CQ and a couple other magazines, and Popcom was pretty much Tom Nitel's magazine. He wrote a lot of the articles, and sometimes he wrote them under assumed names, which was kind of a running joke with them. The articles were pretty good, but it was less of a techie magazine, while Modern Times was more techie, and Popcom was a little less techie. I did have kind of an issue with the reviews. Oftentimes there was a review for an article on page 36, and then on page 38 was an ad for that whatever the product was, and sometimes the reviews were glowing for those. But for the most part, it was a fun magazine to read, and a lot of people who were with RCMA went over to Popcom after RCMA went down.
Wow. Boy, I mean, it's quite an interesting, looking at all these various publications.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had Ira submit this photo of the first issue of Popular Communication, dating back September 1982. He heard that we were doing a broadcast about this, and he sent us an email,
Cool.
saying, "Hey, this is I'll send you a photo of the first cover."
Cool. Well, thanks, Ira. Appreciate it. And you can actually download a lot of these magazines. There's, and I don't remember the name of the website off the top of my head, but there are websites where you can go to where you can download most of these old radio magazines. And I've got a pretty good, almost complete collection of both Popcom and Modern Times from the years that they were around. And it's fun to go back and read some of these old articles, and especially look at some of the old ads for some of the scanners that were no longer available, and it's a lot of fun.
I mean, just look right in the photograph of this cover. There's a classic scanner, peeking over there on the top of that unit. That's
it looks like a 250 or something like that, Bearcat 250.
So let's see here. Scanning USA. This had a short run.
Yeah, it was kind of a, to tell the truth, it was kind of a junk magazine. They about 2/3 of the magazine was filler. They would fill it up with FCC data dumps, and make large print and double space it to fill pages. And they didn't have any paid ads So it only lasted a couple years, and it was kind of a sporadic publishing thing. And then one day they just kind of disappeared, and nobody knows quite what happened to them after that. I included it because there were occasionally some pretty decent articles, but they just never had the content or the support to really make it. I'm sure that if they were able to keep up with it, they might have had better content down the road. But unfortunately, it never really took off. But it was a scanning only magazine, and it was really the only one that was only scanners at the time.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, a lot of those other magazines, had shortwave and some other facets of communication
Yeah.
involved in it. So there was, a couple of avenues for content. With a scanner only magazine, I mean, that you could make it work, but you have to
Yeah.
put a little bit of effort into it. I mean, look at us each and every week. We have to come up with a show topic
Yep.
for what 50 some odd Wednesdays a year.
Yeah. Yeah, and we get it done. But like I say, we're not printing a magazine, and this is it's once a month, so there's going to be content. But like I say, coming up with a scanner only magazine, for 12 or even every other month, the 6 issue magazine is going to be tough. And plus the biggest problem they're going to have now is timeliness. So that's why print magazines, especially for a niche hobby like ours, just really aren't practical these days.
Yeah, especially, like if you're gonna, the great thing about online content is, it can be updated instantaneous.
Yep.
Scanner Digest. Ooh, this
Yeah.
sounds almost like Reader's Digest.
Yeah, this is a great. It's more of a newsletter format, and it was a great newsletter and fantastic content. I really enjoyed it, but they just kind of stopped publishing back about 5 years ago. It was kind of geared towards the Northeast, New England area, but they still had stuff from other areas, and they had a lot of technical content in it as well. So, I don't know what the current status. The website is still there. You can still download the past articles or past newsletters, but they just haven't printed. They haven't released a newer issue since 2015. So, Lou, if you're listening, we miss you.
Yeah, so they must be still paying the web hosting and so on.
Yeah.
To keep that going.
Before we were speaking of where you can download a lot of these magazines, it's worldradiohistory.com.
Worldradiohistory.com. Okay.
Right. So you can go to worldradiohistory.com, and there are a lot. You can download most of the old Popcom and Monitoring Times and other and some of the other print magazines and such from the PDF format. So.
All right. Club newsletters. So it looks like I recognize a few of those.
Mm-hmm.
One that you belong to.
Yeah, I wrote the Carmen newsletter for many years. Myself and a couple other guys did all that stuff. My buddy Bob was very heavily involved with that as well. He was the guy who got me involved with Macintosh computers and kind of started me off there. And then what we would do is we would put the newsletter together and then run it over to a Kinko's copy shop, if you remember those. Oh, wow. And print them on the laser printer because nobody had laser printers back then. And it would cost us 10 or 15 or 20 cents a sheet to print. And if you remember Kinko's from the way back, remember the print card. You bought a card that would give you 50 prints, and you paid $5 for this card or whatever the price was. And we would print this newsletter off and then run it over to our guy who had a high-speed photocopier, and then would copy them for us. So yeah, we did a lot of work to put that newsletter together, 7 or 8 issues a year. All Ohio Scanner Club was another one. They had one, I think it was called the Scanogram, I think is what they called it. And then there were newsletters from the Capitol Hill Monitors and a bunch of other different clubs over the years.
That's for sure. So I guess we'll continue on here. Our e-newsletters. So these are ways that you can keep in contact with us. Scanner Master, of course, has a e-newsletter, which you can take a look at scannermaster.com. There is the Scanner Guys newsletter, which you can check out at the scannerguys.weebly.com. And then, of course, Train Aficionado has its own newsletter at trainaficionado.com. So if you want to stay in touch with the sales end of things for scanners, that's Scanner Master. If you want to learn about upcoming events and things involving the Scanner Guys, that's the Scanner Guys. And then anything rail fanning, Train Aficionado, the newsletter for that will definitely do that. The newsletter is published by e-published by Train Aficionado. It's called the Trackside Bulletin, which is the official newsletter name. But everybody will know it as Train Aficionado because that's where it originates from.
That's right.
And that photo is from the Horseshoe Curve.
Who's that guy in the foreground?
That is me.
Looked like a banana with a cap on.
Yeah, with my Boston Red Sox hat.
Are they in the playoffs this year?
No.
Oh, Cubs lost today.
Yeah. They didn't have a good season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Cubs had a way better season, that's for sure.
Yeah, but if they don't win tomorrow, that's it. So.
Yeah, so we just want to give you a quick reminder. SD cards, we have them available at Scanner Master, $59.95. Each additional county after that is about $20. So you can definitely check out SD cards. What we'll do is we'll get into, it's 30 minutes in and we're already here.
Wow, yeah. Well, I've got some additions from some of our watchers here. So
okay, so let me do this for a second.
Sure.
I want to show. I'm going to skip a couple of slides.
All right.
And I want to show our audience that we have things planned for next month, and we're actually thinking ahead. Here we go.
Yeah.
Look at this, Rich.
All righty. So
we got some big doings here.
Yep. Instead of trying to figure out the topic the day that we have to announce it, we actually have it all planned out up until the end of up into November.
Yeah, we actually have a few gaps, but we actually have it all the way to the beginning of the year. Believe it or not. This is what we were able to fit on the screen. We figure we'll go over this and then we'll go into a little bit of romper room. So this is some cool events that's coming up. So our next show is over at the Train Aficionado YouTube channel, which is Monday, October the 5th. We're going to be scanners for rail fans.
Yep.
And then next Wednesday, the Scanner Guys traveling with a scanner. So we're going to show off some mobile shacks. Rich has his mobile shack. I'm currently building my brand new mobile shack. We're going to talk about, scanners in the vehicle. So if you're looking for tips, suggestions, that's what we're going to be doing that show. If you want to share some photos of your mobile shack, send them on in. I've gotten several emails over the last several weeks showing off a slew of antennas on roofs, Rich. Wait till you see this. You're going to see a whole bunch of antennas on roofs. So that's going to be a real cool thing. I know Joe. Is it Joe that sent you, or somebody sent you some through Facebook?
Yeah. I've got those from Dale.
From Dale. Okay, so you'll have to get those over to me, and so that's going to be a good show. And the thing that's going to be different about that show is I will be actually on the road. I will be broadcasting live from Glitzen, Pennsylvania. So traveling with scanners, I will actually be on the road broadcasting live from Glitzen, Pennsylvania.
Live on location, Jonathan Higgins, the scanner guy.
Yeah, so I will be live there. So I'll be in our mobile studio that evening. So I'll be a little bit further away from you, Rich, I think, mileage wise.
Yeah.
The reason for that is we're having a special bonus episode of the Train Aficionado show Friday, October 9th, live from Altoona, Pennsylvania, that area. Well, it's going to be live from Glitzen, but
Yeah.
we're going to be covering everything rail fanning wise in Altoona. So that'll be a cool show. And I'll have a special guest host. My dad will be joining me on that show. So that should be a lot of fun. So next week, a lot of rail fanning, in between our Monday show and our Friday show. So definitely tune into those shows. And then this following Wednesday, we're really excited about this. We have a special guest that's going to be joining us on the Scanner Guys.
Yeah, that's going to probably be our best show of the year. So we are really looking forward to that one.
And then also, by popular demand, do you see what's coming up on the 21st? Classic
scanners. Yeah. Oh, man. We get, every time we do that, we do different scanners, and everybody, I had one of those, and how about this one and stuff. There were so many neat scanners back in the day that you can't cover them in one or two or three shows. So that's going to be a great one. We're going to show some neat old classic scanners from the past.
And then you can see that we have several other shows there. Let's jump into your questions and comments. So we'll do that right now. We just wanted to give you a preview. Rich and I are quite excited about the fall lineup for shows.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to start with a couple of the more on-topic ones first, and then go from there. So Steve, one of our watchers, said he wrote for two magazines, Modern Times and Popcom, and he had his own hobbyist newsletter called Intercepts. I don't remember seeing that one. It kind of sticks in my noggin that I heard of it, but I don't remember seeing it off the top of my head. But if take a look for that. But I do remember seeing some of Steve's articles in the past. So
that is cool. I mean, to be able to be a writer for several of these publications, that's really awesome, Steve.
Yeah. And Joe writes that it really wasn't Scanner Magazine, but he subscribes to a magazine called Radio Resource and Mission Critical Communications. This one, when I was still in the business, I used to get that in the print version. They may still be getting them back at my office, since I've retired. I never ended up with the digital version of it, but I did get the print version of it, and it's more of a news for the communications professional. Two-way radio communications, trunking radio, terrestrial, all kinds of different terrestrial two-way communications. So that's a great resource. If you ever get a chance to check that out, do so. It's a great commercial reference and professional reference. We mentioned this one earlier, Ohio Scanner Club. They had the American Scanogram. And
cool name.
Yep. Yeah, and back in the day, there were a couple different magazines and newsletters that were in the smaller format. I think it was like 5x7, like a booklet format with stapled. RCMA was that way. All Ohio Scanner Club was that way, and there were a couple others that were done in that smaller format, and it was great to read on a train or during the commute and stuff like that, because it was really kind of a small thing. You can fit it in your back pocket. And that's what RCMA was like for many years until they went to the larger magazine style format. Joe writes that there were tons of regional and local publications. Most of them have gone digital. And I don't know if there's any of those printed ones anymore. Again, those are like club newsletters and local newsletters that there were bunches of them, too many for us to really mention here. And Ron writes that Police Call was kind of considered a magazine by Gene Hughes. He was the author, producer, editor of Police Call for many, many, many years, and he was a scanner god until Rich Barnett took over Police Call towards the end. And you had to buy that every year.
Yeah.
And I remember when it was still the big thing. We had our group of Karma Chicago area scanner club guys, and when one of the Radio Shack stores, there were a couple of Radio Shack stores that tended to get that before everybody else did. And so when they showed up there, we told everybody. We even had a two-way radio system, and we would let everybody know they've got it at Evergreen Park. They've got it at Evergreen Park, and everybody would swoop in and snag them up there.
Yeah, because you had to have it first. If you weren't first, you were last.
Yeah, absolutely. And Evergreen Park, and I lived far north. I mean, as far north as you can be in the Chicago suburbs and still be in Illinois. Evergreen Park was in the south suburbs, almost to Indiana.
So it was a bit of a haul for you.
Yeah, it was a haul, and it's like driving across the country almost. If Chicago traffic.
Not quite like driving across Rhode Island, right?
That's about as far.
But without that major traffic, though.
Yeah, Chicago, so lots of traffic.
Yeah, lots of traffic there versus Rhode Island.
Yeah, so for whatever reason, the one at Evergreen Park used to have them before almost everybody else did. So
I wonder why that was.
The guy who ran the manager of the store was probably a scanner guy.
Yeah, I'm sure he probably put in his order early, when they asked him how many copies of the book he wanted. And then, of course, he knew you guys would flock.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had a guy who lived not too far from there, a guy named Bob, and he would, he checked there almost every day, or maybe the guy called him or something, but he always let us know. And, we'd run down there. And, when you're single and you don't have a family and a wife to take care of or to tell you couldn't do it, that's what you did back then. So, Jerry in Chicago writes that there was a magazine that he thought called the Scanner Association of North America. He still has one of their windbreakers. I don't recall that organization. I've known Jerry for a long time, and I'm from Chicago originally, but I don't recall that one. So if anybody's got a picture of that, I'd like to see it. It'd be interesting to see it. And
this is certainly a show that we can certainly redo and add in more of these regional publications, which would be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, windbreaker is not what you get when you eat beans. So it's one of our other viewers posted. So
Boston baked beans.
Yeah, guess what I had for dinner tonight?
Did you have beans?
I had beans. Yeah.
Well,
now when you make beans, do you cut up hot dogs and put them in there?
Yeah, you can do that. Why?
Yeah. That's what we do. Yeah. People think we're nuts, but
hey, at least I'm not hearing any background noise in the mic.
No, I have the stuff in the back muted right now. So
okay, good. The back mic is muted right now. That's good.
Yes, absolutely. So let's do some of our check-ins. Chris, as always, is our first check-in. I had a chance to speak to him last week, and it was good talking to you last week, Chris.
Yeah, and I actually got an email from Chris with a few train photos. So he was able to capture some photos that are in his neck of the woods. Thank you so much for sharing those with me. I like seeing those. It's good to be able to see rail fanning done out, all over the place. That's I can tell you a vast majority of my social media is I scroll through and it's all trains all the time. So
yeah, that's what most of my Facebook stuff is scanners and trains. So, hey, Chris, hope you're having a great week. And of course, Will checks in 1967, the Chicago Fire Department, and we've told that story many times.
Yeah, looks like Chuck is sorry about your Cubs.
Yeah, I know the Cubs lost. They better not lose tomorrow. They got to win two in a row to move up. So
How was it the White Sox? Are they in it or out of it?
oh, they're in it, and they're in it big time. They and it's really funny. They've got a better record than the Cubs, and they ended up being in third place in their division. So it kind of tells you about the American League Central versus the National League Central.
So that I mean, do you think they could end up head to head in the World Series?
It's possible. I think the White Sox have got a better chance of advancing than the Cubs do. You know, being a Cubs fan, that pains me to say, but the White Sox are good. And they played yesterday. I don't know what they're doing today, but they played yesterday, and their starting pitcher, who I don't follow him, so I don't remember the name, but I just read it that he did. You know, he had like a perfect game going into the middle, you know, to the seventh inning or something like that. But they did win convincingly yesterday. And I would love to see an all Chicago World Series. That hasn't happened in my lifetime, but that would be awesome. So, which means then the problem is the World Series will not be played in Chicago, even if both Chicago teams are in it. It's going to be played in a bubble. I think it's playing in Houston or
Yeah,
like
I mean everything is because of COVID, everything is so strange with everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be so cool if the World Series played there, it's literally like a train ride, as you said, in between the two. So people would be bouncing back and forth in between the two locations, which would be really cool for the city.
Yeah, it'd be like the Crosstown World Series or the Red Line World Series because it's just Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a far commute for either fan locally.
Yeah. I mean, you can take the L to either park. So, got a few regulars checking in. Dave's in Buffalo, and is it snowing in Buffalo yet, Dave? I actually got caught in a blizzard in Buffalo once, and I pulled into the hotel at 6:00 at night. And it was snowing. And by 10 o'clock at night, there was already 1.5 feet of snow on the ground. So they get that air coming across the lake, and it just dumps the snow on Buffalo.
That is so crazy, the weather with the lakes.
Yeah. Now, we have what we call lake effect snow in Chicago, but you'll get this fury of snow right up at the lakefront, and then you drive 3 blocks inland, and it's gone. And it's just it's fun. So I got a bunch of other check-ins. Kevin's checking in. John is in Jersey, Bergen County. I guess that's was that like Trenton or something like that? It's northern New Jersey, I guess.
Yeah.
So Joe checks in. Joe, you're on Facebook. This is the last show on Facebook. So next week, make sure you're on the YouTube channel because you won't find it on Facebook.
Yeah, definitely make the switch. I mean, make the switch to our Facebook, from Facebook to YouTube, because YouTube is where it's at.
Yep, absolutely. So Ray and Joe are checking in. We're having some audio issues at the beginning of the show. We got that fixed. And somebody's at your front door.
No, that's just one of the dogs going up, more than likely. And we actually have behind my shoulder here. Oops, where is it?
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, is Abby in the bed tonight? So she's cool. Joining us, mixed in with the blankets there.
Oh, there's a dog in there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I can't hardly tell.
Yeah, she's blended in between the two blankets. So she actually had her face pointing out earlier in the broadcast. She's kind of buried it in.
Yeah, our cats used to do that. They used to kind of dig themselves in underneath the covers.
Yeah, she's the matriarch of the pack. She's 14 years old. She's a rat terrier.
Oh, cool. She's just getting used to the joint, huh?
Yeah, she's probably. Well, we always kid she's always thinking, why did you get the other two? Wasn't I good enough?
Yeah, you know what? When we got the second cat, our first cat was like, "What's the point? Aren't I good enough for you guys? And you got to go and get this other."
Yeah.
He was not a happy camper.
I'm sure he wasn't.
Okay, so Gene checks in. I've talked to Gene on the phone a couple times. Hello, hello. And we've already talked about Jerry. I've known him for about 1,000,000 years, maybe 1.5 million.
Wow, geez, it's a
Yeah,
long time.
yeah, absolutely. We got a check in from Sedalia, Missouri. And and that's pronounced Missouri. There's an A at the end of the state. Like there's no S in Illinois either. So you can always tell somebody who's not from Illinois because they say Illinois. There's no
Yeah, I
S in
never
Illinois.
said Illinois. It's always Illinois.
Yeah,
That's kind of strange. Illinois, because you kind of making it plural at that
yeah,
point.
yep, absolutely. So yeah, well, we could do a whole show on mispronounced state names.
Or we can do a show on mispronounced poor Worcester. As you
Well, Worcester. I actually talked to a guy from Worcester
Worcester.
on Monday, and we joked about that. So, but it's funny. There's a city in Maryland with the same name, and it is pronounced Worcester.
Yeah, it's strange how things are pronounced differently in different regions.
Yeah, Jerry's checking in from Cincinnati. Have you been to Cincinnati?
No, I haven't.
There was an article in one of the train magazines recently about the remodeling of the former, well, I guess it's still the Amtrak station, the passenger station there. It looks like a big seashell. Really have done a nice job. And I've been through there before they rebuilt the place, but it was kind of a dump then, but they've done a nice job with it, made some museums in it. And it's on my bucket list.
Yeah, and then the other station that was in the news not too long ago was, what was it, Detroit, Michigan?
Mm-hmm.
It was Ford Motor Company bought the building.
Yeah,
is that
the old
right?
the Michigan Central Station,
And
it's like 10 or 12-story high.
yeah, and they're going to preserve the waiting area where where people would wait, and then of course the offices will be in the other floors. But that's pretty neat.
Yeah, that place had pretty much been gutted, been abandoned for years and years and years, and like every window had been broken, and it's surprising that it was still standing. Obviously Detroit's got some issues, and Tiger Stadium sat abandoned for years, and my buddy who lives in the Detroit area, in fact, I think he's on the show tonight. He and I kind of check that area out the one time when I was out visiting, and I had been to Tiger Stadium for some games, and then to go there 5 or 6 years after the place closed down, and just to see how decrepit it got. And we drove by that station that's right off of Highway 12.
Yeah, speaking of abandoned places, there's a really cool YouTube channel. If you're into abandoned buildings and so on, the YouTube channel is called The Proper People. Definitely check that out while you're perusing YouTube. Definitely a really cool channel to check out there.
Also, talking about abandoned, we were talking about the Hera Arena. For all those who have been there many times for the Dayton Ham Fest, there's several videos of guys who've gone into the building since it's closed and got videos of the inside and outside of the place. It gives you kind of a idea of how decrepit that place has gotten over the years. And I think it probably is a better condition now that it's been abandoned for 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, there was one guy, I actually sent an email to you, to Rich Barnett and Gomert of Butel Software, because you guys spent a lot of times at Hamfest there, and the gentleman produced 2 videos. So basically, before the tornado and after the tornado. And he was able to say, well, there used to be furniture in here, whether or not it got blown away or removed.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, when a tornado improves the facility, it was pretty bad. So we if you've never been to Hera Arena, you cannot appreciate how bad that place was towards the end. And some people remember some of the sewage issues that they had in the parking lot.
Oh, I've heard.
The Hamfest. Yeah.
God, I heard, you tell me stories about, how people would be out there and there would be some additional mud.
Yes. Yeah. Man-made mud. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So Evan and Joe are checking in about our audio. And again, we got that fixed. Hopefully that'll stay fixed. Lincoln in San Diego, he's one of our regulars. Kev's checking in from Georgia. And let's see. Still, Steve's checking in from Pennsylvania. Beautiful fall evening. Yeah, it's starting to cool off around here these days. It's only 101 today, which is actually kind of nice. I took a walk around the block this afternoon. It was about 100 degrees out. Didn't even break a sweat.
Yeah, it looks like your pool's empty.
Yeah, I know. I'll be in that later on tonight. So
I can see it right now.
Well, you can see it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the pool's empty right now. It's available.
Yeah, but it won't be tonight. So Dave's got a good question here. Hey, Charlie, how you doing? So, Charlie, you're on Facebook. Make sure you're on YouTube next week because we won't be on Facebook. Members reading Steve's articles. So I remember reading some of Steve's stuff in the past as well. So let's see here. Randy's checking in. Joe says that the hair is in the process of being torn down. So I'm sure there'll be a parking lot soon. I don't know what they're planning on putting in there. Maybe they're just tearing it down just to keep it from falling down. Art is in Sacramento. And Randy was California, Orange County 103. So most states with the RCMA was the Radio Communications Monitoring Association. Members were assigned a membership number, and the first two letters were the state, and then there were 1, 2, or 3, or even 4 digits perhaps for the sequential number. And California, having so many members, they added a 2-letter code for the county as well. So Randy was in Orange County, so it was CA-OR-103. So if you're in LA County, it would be CA-LA, or San Diego County, it would be CA-SD. So in Illinois, we didn't have that many members. I was Illinois 370, and I think they went up to around 500 members before RCMA finally went down, and that was for Illinois. Let's see. Terry used to get the Monitoring Times when it was still in the newsprint format. I still have a couple of those from back in the day that I saved. I used to have the complete printed collection of the printed versions of Monitoring Times, but I had to give that up after when I was moving from apartment to apartment or house. We got the new house. We're just running out of room.
Yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about digital subscriptions. It's just doesn't take up any space other than memory.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got, like I said, I've got all the Monitoring Times on PDF, which means I don't have to keep the printed versions anymore. And the same thing with PopCom and a couple others. Let's see here. We talked about that already. Wayback Internet. Ray writes Wayback Internet. That's one way that you can get old websites. We were talking earlier about where you can get the copies of the magazines, the historical magazines. And Wayback Internet is another way that you can go back and get old websites as well. And let's see here. We spoke that. S9 magazine. That was a CB magazine. But they also had a scanning column or two in there, and they occasionally have scanner articles. I wasn't really into CB so much way back then, but it was pretty popular, and Ron also wrote about that too. So, and again, it was more of a CB thing. I just really wasn't into it. And let's see here. I just lost my page. That was weird. I was scrolling through everything, and it just kind of dropped. So there we go. Thank you for highlighting that. Back in the 70s, there was a TV show called Kojak, and he had a Bearcat scanner with a headset. And that's how he talked to the other guys in the show. So, yeah, TV shows were not always real accurate on how they portrayed radios. I remember seeing TV shows where they would take a handheld scanner. It was obviously a scanner, and they would talk into it. They had Die Hard was famous for that. They had the magic walkie-talkies that, depending on what they had to do, they could talk to whoever they wanted to talk to. They could talk to the police. They could talk to that guy. They could talk to the bad guy. But, of course, the bad guy couldn't hear the police, but he had the exact same radio, So
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah. And then they would have guys that were talking on the backside of the mic, or obviously they weren't pushing the push-to-talk microphone. They were still talking. And
I love it when they do two-way radio scenes in shows or movies, and you can hear both ends of the conversation at the same time. Versus one keying in, keying out, the other one keying in.
Yeah. Or the guy would be shouting at his dispatcher, and he'd have a gun in one hand and a baton in the other. And how's he talking to the dispatcher when he's not keying the mic?
Yeah.
So we should do a show on winter weather preparedness and road conditions. Okay, well, that's something we can put in our list.
Yeah, that would be a good one. We do have gaps in the schedules, so we can definitely add that in. I think right now we're filled up for October, but November we do have some gaps.
Cool. Dale writes that there was a magazine back in the mid to late 70s called Scan, and a couple others mentioned. Randy wrote that it was put out by Electra Bearcat, so this was back before the Uniden days. And so Bearcat either produced or sponsored Scan magazine. I don't really recall that one as off the top of my head, but I'm sure I saw it back in the day. Chris, hello, Chris. He's my neighbor, just about these days. Really, he lives about 5 miles from me, but it's about an hour drive to get there. So you just can't get from my house to his house.
Can't get there from here.
No, you really can't. Yeah, you got to go all the way into town and then all the way back out on another road just to get there. So there was another magazine called Communications. That was another one of those trade magazines, I think. I'm not sure about that one. There were a bunch of trade magazines, and if you ever go to trade shows, for communications trade shows or law enforcement trade shows and stuff like that, there are a bunch of magazines that they try to get you subscribed to, and they're usually free. But the reason they want you to subscribe to them and get the magazine in your hands is because of the advertisements. And the advertisements are geared towards the professionals in the business. So it makes it worthwhile for the magazine printers to print that up because they sell enough ad space to cover the expenses, and they want you to get it, and they want you to get it for free so that you can view their ads. And some of the ads are actually very on point, and we would use those ads to send copies of RFPs and proposals and stuff for our projects. And we got some good vendors on board in that way. Let's see here. Another reminder to go on YouTube. So anybody who's on Facebook, go to YouTube for next week. And Ira asks if we read National Communications. I don't subscribe to it. I haven't subscribed to it. I do read Spectrum Monitors, but I haven't been reading National Communications. I've seen a couple issues from here and there, and it's pretty good, but I just don't happen to subscribe to it right now. Dale says he has the blue collar pin that Scan used to send you when you subscribe. So apparently they sent you a pin to go on your collar. So kind of, I guess it would be kind of like a challenge coin. So you could see another guy wearing it down the street. Same thing with like the Scanner Guys T-shirt.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm wearing my Hawaii shirt, but
yeah, I got mine on tonight.
Yeah, I forgot to put mine on today. So
at least you got a shirt on.
Well, that's true. That's a good thing too. You do not want to see me
Yeah,
without a
same
shirt.
thing with me. You don't want to see me shirtless either.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we're sitting down, so there's no telling whether or not we have pants on, but
Yes, I assure you, I have something on.
yeah. BBDs don't cut it tonight, so.
No, I don't wear those. I'm a boxer.
Okay, so everybody, Jonathan goes commando.
No, I'm just kidding. Boxers for me, no tighty whities.
Okay. Hey, the boys got to have a home, my friend.
Yes.
All righty. So, Todd, let's get back on point here. Todd says he still has all the CDs from Police Call. So, for those of you that don't know about Police Call was the annual frequency guide. It was broken up into 9 volumes for the country. So, volume 4 was Illinois and Indiana, Kentucky, Wisconsin. Yeah, I think there were 4 states, and then volume 3 was Michigan, Ohio, and volume 6 was this, and volume 8 was that. And towards the last few years, they provided a CD with the book. That CD, I think, if I recall properly, had the entire nation on it. So you plug it into your computer, and then you can cruise through the entire nation versus just the one area of the country that your printed version had. Ron writes at yes, sir.
Who remembers Mr. Scanner forgetting frequency lists? Yeah, I've gotten a few lists from him.
Oh, and Betty Bearcat.
Betty Bearcat.
Bearcat. Yeah. There were a bunch of those frequency guides that were put out by the scanner manufacturers. So, and there were actually 2 versions of Police Call for many years as well. You could get Police Call, which you could buy in bookstores or directly from them. And then the Radio Shack version actually had the Radio Shack name on it. And that was the ones you would buy at Radio Shack. So you could always tell whether or not you bought Police Call at Radio Shack or off the newsstand or from a bookstore, because the Radio Shack ones actually had the name Radio Shack printed on them.
Was there any other difference than just the Radio Shack name?
Not to my knowledge. But Radio Shack loved to have their products private labeled for them. I mean, Radio Shack didn't make their own scanners. Most of their scanners are made by GRE and Uniden. And they did make some of their own products over the years, but scanners they didn't. But they did have some of their own manufacturing facilities for different products, just not scanners. At least not towards the end. Scan Michigan used a small 5x7 format for a while. Then they went out before they went out. So there were a bunch of those little small format newsletter. Those are mostly the newsletter style, and then the larger ones were magazine style. So Joe asks how Police Call got their data. So what Gene did is that he got the data from the FCC, and I don't know the technical ways he got the data. And I, towards the end, you can get it from, buying the CDs from contractors for the FCC or downloading it directly from their website. But back then, before that was a way of doing things, I don't know if he got them on printouts or microfiche or what, but he massaged the data. So it wasn't just a dump of the FCC data. It was massaged. It was a lot of the entries had notes attached to them, like, police F1 or, dispatch or car to car, different notes on what the channels were used for. And such. So it wasn't just a raw data dump. It was massaged.
Yeah, I remember that. And then, going into the scanner books, the Scanner Master books, that had even more detail.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And having written a couple of those myself, that was a lot of work. And, that we did 4 or 5 months worth of work on that. myself and several other guys. So our buddy 626 Hawkeye used to get the air show issues at the newsstands. He wished he had subscribed to the magazines, but Modern Times did an air show issue every spring before air show season got underway. So, you would use that as a great reference for the upcoming air shows.
That would be definitely a good show to get somebody on. I know Phil does a lot with aviation.
Mm-hmm.
Phil from the Scanner School. Maybe we should do our own air show. How to prepare for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of my friends from the Karma guys in Chicago used to go to the Chicago Air and Water Show every summer and camp out on the beach and set up a huge monitoring station, batteries, handheld scanners, and all kinds of reference materials. And my good buddy Ted, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, would spend the entire week before the show preparing for it and going to the pre-show and practice shows and looking for the frequencies, and then he would share all that with the rest of the members. And then his air show, it was a 2-day air show, and his air show station, he would obviously have a couple lawn chairs, an umbrella, several scanners, backup batteries, and then in later days, a laptop so he could share the information, and obviously cameras and stuff. And there were several other guys, Joel and Fred, and some of the other guys who were the air show crew. And it was all about finding the frequencies that they were using. And if you've ever gone to an air show, listen to a scanner and listen to the air-to-air channels and the show boss. Fascinating stuff to listen to. All right, so Steve says, thanks for the shout out. He went on to write for Popular Science, Wired, and that's Wired, not Weird. It's Wired. It's a computer magazine. And he wrote a bunch of books and even a couple novels. So, yeah, he is a accomplished guy.
Wow,
so now he's
awesome.
still, a photojournalist now. So it's been a guiding force for him. So, hey, awesome. And make sure you're on our YouTube channel next week, Steve, because we're not going to be on Facebook next week. But, yeah, when you're a writer, you tend to do a lot of writing. And, so like I said, I've written for several magazines. I've written, a couple of the guides. I've written the Great American Novel, but of course it hasn't been published. But but when you get into writing, it really gets into your blood, and you really want to continue doing it. So, let's see here. Jerry says he thinks that that Gene Hughes used microfiche. So you could buy the FCC database on microfiche back in the day. And I can remember in the 70s and 80s going to the FCC office in suburban Chicago, a little town called Park Ridge. And they had an office on the 4th or 5th story of a office building there. And you can go in and request the microfiche, and they had a microfiche reader in the lobby and do research. And I'd spend hours in there doing that. So. Let's see here. Chris said we talked about Chris earlier, and Joe checks in from New York. So Ron used to work at a Radio Shack in suburban Detroit, and all the people that worked there were ham radio operators. So they were always the first one to get the police call in his area. Joe is in Harford County, Maryland. BB is in the playoffs, so I'm not sure what BB stands for, Joe. Yeah, Greg writes, it's 2020. If there's a subway series in Chicago, it's a sure sign of the apocalypse. Yeah.
I just hope 2020 doesn't get any more worse than it already is.
Oh, I'd be so happy to get out of 2020.
Yeah.
And do we do a show on the different scanner websites? So no, this is where we do our show right here. We both work for Scanner Master, and Scanner Master sponsors and supports the Scanner Guys show. So
yeah, so the The Train Aficionado show is not a sponsored show as of yet. That's something that Rich and I are doing on our own. It's kind of like a spin-off of this show. And then, we are getting in interviews, which the next interview we're very, very, very excited about.
Yeah.
So definitely keep tuning in right here on YouTube. And the YouTube
Absolutely.
channel, there's 2 YouTube channels. Scanner Master has its own.
Yeah.
And the Scanner Guys, we have our own. So we broadcast all of our broadcasts on the Scanner Guys.
Good, because Jim asked that question a couple messages down, so you must have saw that.
Yes.
So yeah, so our shows are on the Scanner Guys YouTube channel.
Yeah, so everything is on there. Any educational videos that are geared towards the Scanner Master audience are on the Scanner Master YouTube channel, but all the Scanner Guys shows are right here on the Scanner Guys YouTube channel. And believe it or not, you can, oh my God, you can binge watch us if you wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you don't have a life and you want to watch 24 hours of the Scanner Guys,
yeah,
more power to you, partner. So Glenn is checking in from Raleigh. He's got some internet issues, but he'll watch the show later on. Again, you can watch the show in the rerun down the road. Corey's checking in. And Mike is in Auburn, Mass. So Chris asks when the event is in Ohio, so assuming he means the Hamvention. That's typically in May.
Yeah, they haven't. I know because they canceled because of Corona. They canceled the date in Hamvention for 2020. I'll pull it up while you answer a few questions.
So it's usually in the spring. So hopefully it'll be going on this coming year if the COVID thing is under control by then. And we were talking earlier about the Ford rehabbing the old Michigan Central station. They are offering financial rewards for the return of some of the interior objects from the old station. So if you went in and stole something, you can sell it back to Ford. Yeah. Okay. So May 21st through the 23rd is the scheduled Hamvention. So hopefully, like I say, COVID is under control by then. Obviously, the 2020 has been canceled. So we were planning on going this year, but obviously that didn't happen.
What does it say on this? It says, okay, let me just look back. Oh, yeah, that's 2021. I just want to look at this other slide. See, it shows, it's kind of strange how the wording canceled.
Yeah, it's the 2020 was canceled. The 2021 is still on, at least for now.
Yes. Yeah, so hopefully it'll be an appearance by the both of us. I'm hoping that, Rich will send both of us, or we could just run a fundraiser and we can just send our own behinds there.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We can do that as well. I mean, I'm sure you guys would get behind a little fundraiser.
A fundraiser for the fun guys. Yep.
Yes.
So Sewergate 2010. That was the big problem in the Hare Arena. That was 10 years ago. So
I mean, you look at their facility. Let me just pull that up one more time.
Yeah.
It's a really nice facility here. I mean,
we have a new one. Yeah.
We were in this building, right, Rich?
Yep.
And then, we were parked back here. The sausage truck, as you always refer to, is parked over here by the mail order tickets now available there.
Oh man, that smell going into the building was just heaven. I love Italian sausage, and that was just like, I would be going on. I'd be by 10:30. I'm like, I gotta go get one.
Yeah, it's a sausage truck right in the middle.
Yep. Yeah. So you're right. We were right about there underneath that, right there. We're close to the door, and that's where our booth was. And it was a nice facility. The buildings are in good condition. The first year they had some mud issues in the in this area up here course, you're not seeing my mouse. Yeah.
Where?
But
Hold on, right up in this area?
yeah, in that
So,
area, that's where the flea market area
yeah,
was.
right up here.
And they had some mud issues there the first year, but they remediated that, and now it's in the last couple of years they did a much better job. So, it's a much better facility, and they really have done a nice job there. So. Let's see here. Apparently, the old Harris site's being rezoned for light industrial. So we did talk about Betty Bearcat probably after the comment was posted, but yeah, we did talk about that a little bit earlier. And that was it was a kind of a police call light, you might say. It was not the Bible that police call was, but it was still a good resource. A couple more check-ins. State police with radar. Kojak had a Kodak on CB. I'm not quite sure what that was. I didn't watch Kojak that much. I didn't watch a lot of TV back then either.
You
Anyways,
don't watch a lot of TV now.
No.
I mean, anybody that's asked anything about Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, you're completely deer in headlights, don't know anything about it. Have you binge watched any shows?
A few. And they're things like, the ones that I have are like Friends, Boston Legal, Stargate.
Anything that your wife and you have watched?
Oh yeah, that's a lot of those. Yeah. So those are the ones. Those are the ones that we like the best. So Boston Legal, Stargate, and Friends. So, Emergency back in the day. That was the one show that I did watch all the time, and that's why I got on the fire department. I was on the fire department when that show came out, and and of course I went to EMT and paramedic school there. So they used to talk in the back of their mic. Yeah. That was not unusual for TV back in the day. So, yes, Dave, we did answer your antenna. Ground it. If it's outside, make sure you ground it. As long as the antenna is mounted properly to the mast and the base, just grounding the base should be sufficient. Who had a Tandy computer? I had a TRS-80. How about you?
I haven't had a Tandy computer.
Yeah, I had a TRS-80. In fact, I gave that to my buddy Bob. Or was it the Commodore? I don't remember, but I never could get the Commodore or the TRS-80 to do much. But it wasn't until I got my first Mac. It was a Mac Plus, actually a Mac 512 that in 1985. That was my first real computer that I actually had got to actually do anything. Bobby used to take.
I love this comment. I love this comment. I could totally see how people could mistaken that for a telephone book.
It looked like a thin telephone book. The same type of text, same type of paper. And and absolutely. And yeah, when I was in high school, the police calls were, still the thing. And actually they were, it was well after I got out of high school that they went out. But yeah, that was that's a very easy. And when you live in a small town, your phone book is that thick anyway. So I can remember our phone book being 20 pages of 5x7. There were 400 or 500 people in our town, and our phone number was 1282. Period. That was it. That was the phone number. Let's see here. Of course, and I can remember my grandmother, she had a party line at her house. So that's kind of telling how far back I go. Ira remembers frequency guides from CRB Research. So CRB Research was Tom Nitel. And he wrote a lot of those federal guides and stuff. And a lot of that stuff was pretty good. And it was really about the only place where you're going to be able to find that type of stuff back then. Randy wrote that there was a Southern California edition. It was called the Southern California Detail Edition of Police Call. It was nothing like the national books. It was geared specifically for the LA, San Diego area, and it was very detailed. Went into a lot of maps and stuff like that. A lot of great detail about Southern California, and it wasn't available in the stores. I remember buying one at a scanner store in Anaheim when my wife and I were at Disney World or Disneyland in California. Yeah. We were on our honeymoon, and we went to Disneyland for our honeymoon.
Buy this book?
Yeah, and so I went to the scanner. There was some big scanner store in Anaheim, California, and I bought a couple things, and I bought a California Detail. I still got that. Mike still has the print edition of the Scanner Master Massachusetts Communications Guide.
Is that the Mike? Is that the big book? I wish I still had a copy of that, the big book.
I have a couple copies of the Illinois Guide that I wrote, but I don't remember seeing one of these.
Yeah, there's a big edition that everybody loves. It's like telephone book size.
Yeah,
and it had maps. It had lots of detail. A lot of people from Massachusetts kept that one because they refer to it. It had, for the state police patrols. It had all that with the troop maps and all that.
Yeah, and Mike did confirm it was the big book. So
okay.
Does Rich still have any of those? I wonder if he does.
I don't know. I mean, I know. I believe he does have. He has a collection, at least a couple copies of them. Yeah. I have on my bookshelf. I do have some of the recent smaller pocket guide books.
Yeah. So Larry Van Horn, who was from Monitoring Times back in the day, still publishes his International Air Show Guide. You can get it on your Kindle. So that would be a great resource if you're into air shows. So look for that. It's called the Teak International Air Show Guide, written by Larry Van Horn. And he's a well-known expert in aviation communications. So look for that.
I wonder if we could get him on the show.
He would be a good. I think he'd be a good one for us. So,
if anybody knows how to reach him, send us a message and we'll reach out to him and see if he'll do a show. I mean, that'll be really cool to be able to do something like that.
Absolutely.
We could, talk a little bit about aviation communication right before the aviation air show season starts.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember CompuServe?
Yes, that was a computer store. Am I right?
No, CompuServe was a computer service. It was kind of this was back when you didn't have the broader internet like we have now, and you would join up with CompuServe or AOL, and they had their own independent content, and it was like a bulletin board service. So I had CompuServe. And I had AOL, and there were a couple other ones, and I just can't remember the names right off the top of my head. But they usually would have special interest sections, or chat rooms, or whatever that particular service called them. And CompuServe had one for scanner buffs. It was not like the internet like we know it now. It was dial up. And you had to dial their phone number and with a modem, and it was nowhere near what we have now. But back then, it was the shiz because that was.
So it's almost like not an internet, but intranet. I can't think of
intranet. Intranet. Yeah, it was more closed. You had to be a member in order to get to it. So yeah, it was a little bit more a little closed in. So. All right. Oh, BB was baseball. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So Dave used to drive a school bus part-time, and he was going to write a novel called 100,000 Miles to Nowhere.
Wow.
So I've got a few friends of mine who drive school buses, and that's a challenging job.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're parked. You got to maintain, some order, discipline on there, and protect the safety of the kids. So, Dale used to go and borrow the FCC printout from his local radio shop and copy all the local frequencies and type them up for a reference list. So, back in the days before the internet, a lot of areas had different ways of sharing information. And a lot of times, your local Radio Shack store or your local electronics store or scanner shop would have printed lists of local frequencies. We had a store in suburban Chicago called Microy Electronics, and then later called 645. And they had what they called the crystal wall, and basically it was a wall with the crystals for the local area that were on hooks. And then over here there was a paper, and they would write down all the frequencies for the local police. So Wheeling Police daytime was 155.13, and the night channel was 155.76, and the fire channel was 154.445. And you would look at that list and find your town and say, okay, I need this crystal, and that crystal, and you pick those crystals out and take them up front and buy it. The local Radio Shack stores often had printed lists where you can go in. If you bought a scanner, they'd run off a couple copies of the printed list for you and send you home with those. And there were a bunch of sources like that. One of the things we did in the RCMA Chicago chapter and later called Karma is we had a member who created something called the PL list. And originally RCMA had a rule where you could not talk about PL tones. It was just something that you weren't allowed to talk about. So we kind of had a secret squirrel list of frequencies with PL tones. And this guy Brandt would produce this list on an irregular basis and then give copies of it to people who helped them with some of the data and stuff like that. And if you got a copy of the PL list, that was you've arrived type of thing. And then later, when I got my first Macintosh, well, actually I didn't have it. Bob had one, and he worked in a convenience store on the night shift. And I would get off of work at 11 o'clock from the police department, and I'd go and sit in the back of his convenience store and enter each item from the PL list into a database. And then that's how we computerized this thing. And there was no way to import back then. It was just every record, every frequency was another record. And I spent probably 2 or 3 weeks, several hours a night, copying all this stuff into a computer database. And that was a great thing. And we should share it with our guys from the Scanner Club. All right, Ron's checking in from Bay City, Michigan. The fourth of us working hard on the radio reference database admin. So yeah, there are several radio reference database administrators on our show tonight. 2 of them are on screen and several others in the chat.
I gotta do some work on there. I haven't been on there for a little bit. But
I did some work this afternoon. I did some got a couple submissions that I worked this afternoon, and when I saw that, I cleaned up a few other things in there while I was bouncing around. So Paul's checking in from Connecticut. So Ron's in Michigan. He's got the railroad called the Lake State Railroad. They got a yard a couple miles from him, so at night he can hear the diesel rev up, and then bam as they're switching the yard. So yeah, that's not uncommon to hear those loud crashes of cars bouncing into each other. It's perfectly normal. People, the first time you hear that, startles you, and then you get used to it. So I used to have an apartment, a third-floor apartment, directly above the Chicago Northwestern, Chicago to Milwaukee main line. And it was great, and it was all freight there, so I didn't have to worry about commuters. So every train that went through was something interesting. And it wasn't just Chicago Northwestern. It was the Milwaukee Road, and then later on the Sioux Line, and then the Wisconsin Central, and the Fox River Valley, and then later on the Fox Valley Western, as these short lines got bounced around. So it was kind of fun to see all those, and you never knew what you were going to see.
And do you remember the Do you remember the famous line from the? Oops, I got my hairs. The famous line from the Blues Brothers when he brought him up to his little tiny apartment. How often do the trains go by?
Oh, yeah, so often you don't even notice them anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. He lived right next to the L. Yeah, I couldn't do that. I don't mind living next to the railroad tracks because I like trains, but and then my wife didn't mind it so much because she couldn't hear them, although she could feel them. Boom, 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 boom as they go by. So there's some good stories, but unfortunately, I can't tell them here. Although I do remember one night, about 3:00 in the morning, there was a grade crossing right outside, so you could hear the gates go down, but there were no horns because it was a no horn area. But apparently some car went around the gates or something like that, and they just leaned on that horn about 3:00 in the morning. And it was like that train was coming in the window, taking a few laps around my bedroom and zooming out again. It was just like,
Was this the evening you had a guest?
Yeah, it was before I was married, and I had a guest for the evening, and a train came by, and yeah, and I think her fingernail mounts or holes are still in the ceiling there. So yeah. Oh, some stories. So let's see here. Todd still has his Betty Bearcat directory someplace. I had a couple of those. Unfortunately, I didn't save them, but I kind of wish I would have. I resemble General Hammond. So if you're a Stargate fan, I've been called worse. So at least I don't. I'd rather resemble General Hammond than Major Carter. So
I've never seen Stargate.
Oh, a great show. Had nothing to do with radios, although they did have radios. They had Motorola Visors, and those were the radios that they always had, so they used them quite a bit. But Stargate was a great show, and it was a sci-fi show, kind of like a Star Trek type of thing, but it was very well done.
General Hammond.
General Hammond, yeah, played by Don Starr. I think it was the actor's name. So, bald man from Texas.
Yeah, we're gonna pull that up momentarily here.
So the TRS-80 was also called the Trash 80. Yeah.
Trash 80.
Yeah, Ron had one of those. And again, I had one too, but I never really got to do much. So, yeah. Major General George Hammond of Stargate Command.
What do you guys think? Is there a comparison there?
I got a little more hair than he does. Not much, but a little bit more than he does. So, yeah, he actually the actor who played General Hammond on the show was a stuntman, and he was Richard Dean Anderson, who was the star of the show. He was his stuntman from his old show, which was MacGyver, which I never actually saw any of that show, but and I really didn't know who he was because I had never watched MacGyver and then when that show came out, everybody's like, all this about Richard Dean. And I said, who's that guy? I'd never heard of him before. So we had a bunch of guys who had Commodore VIC-20s. I had a Commodore 64 and then later a Commodore 128. But again, I really never got him to do much. Okay, here's a good one. Ron writes that the National Weather Service had several Radio Shack TRS-80 computers. They used them to issue warnings. They were much faster than doing the old punch tape driven machines. So they were pretty high tech back in the day. Chris still watches Emergency. It's still on subscription TV stuff. I imagine it's probably on Netflix and Hulu and stuff.
Yeah, and it's probably in some of those secondary HD channels. They have a lot of classic television. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one show that I did watch. And when I was on the fire department, of course, when it was, I don't remember what night, it was Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever night it was. If that show was on, everybody was watching. It was like, oh, this is so cool, And we all wanted to ride on 51. And back in the day, if you were on the job and you went to the fire station, which was in a city called Carson, suburban LA, and if you badged them, they'd take you in and show you around the station. Yeah, they only used it for the exterior shots, but it was still pretty cool to go in there. And I did that. I was on the fire department. I walked up to the door and I showed my badge, and and I made sure that we sent them a couple patches and stuff when I got home.
We've got some reaction about the whether or not you look like him. Look, he's just shaking his head. No.
No, he's a much better looking guy than I am, and I don't have the stars, so I start shaving my head. Yeah, and I wear a short shirt with a short sleeve shirt with a tie.
Yeah.
I was in the Air Force for 15, 20 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's all.
Yeah, I had actually signed up for enlistment, and then there was a issue, and I tore up my enlistment papers and went home, and they never came after me. So they probably still have a warrant for me or something. I don't know, but I was still in high school. So
well, they would have picked that up when you became a police officer if you had a warrant.
Probably, yeah, probably. So
we'll let that one slide.
Yeah, we'll let that one go. So. Yeah, Bob. So Bob writes. Bob actually, he is one of my neighbors out here now, and I've known him for 40 years. He's a buddy of mine from suburban Chicago.
Not a million years. Not a million.
No, several decades anyway. So he had a bulletin board back in the day. Remember the old bulletin boards? And he had what called the Monitor Post BBS, and that was all about. Listening to radios, and that was real popular back in the Chicago area back in the day. So that was a popular one, and I think he ran that on a Commodore. And then another guy, Will, who's very always watches the show every week. He ran one called SCUG, which was the Suburban Commodore Users Group. And that eventually became the Karma BBS, and that was our first internet presence. Was on those two BBSs. So Todd has got a 796D. He needs a better antenna to hear the Lusk, Wyoming site on the WildLink, which is the state digital radio system. And so he is trying to hear the Lusk site. And I've been to Lusk many times. That was my base of operations when I would be chasing the Northwestern and the Burlington Northern coal line. And that they had a couple of hotels and motels and stuff. And so that's where I would stay when I'd be out chasing the coal lines up there by Bill and the whole southeastern Wyoming area. So that's a nice part of the country to be in the summertime. You don't want to be there in the wintertime because it gets really cold and snowy. Oh, and Genie was another one of those BBSs. Genie was not a BBS so much as a dial-in service, but yeah, Genie was a big one. It was CompuServe, Genie, and AOL were the big ones. And they all had their own dial-up numbers and such. So Joe said he sent me an email with Larry's contact info. So thanks, Joe. We appreciate that. And let's see here. Klein had the Radio Shack. So yeah, if you had a good contact with the guys at Radio Shack, they'd take care of you back in the day. I had a friend of mine, a guy I knew who worked at the Radio Shack in Skokie, Illinois. And when the Pro 2005 first came out, I wanted one real bad, and they got one. And they called me, and I went there with cash and paid for it. And the neat thing about the 2005 is that it fit perfectly in my car at the time between the ashtray, which since I don't smoke, it was my change holder, and the glove box door. It fit in there perfectly. I put a couple little L brackets in there, and it even matched the color of the interior. So that was an ideal scanner for me. So Ron writes that one of the police departments in Michigan, in Ann Arbor, they took 155.91 off their license. They didn't want to be in the police call. They wanted to be stealthy. That was not unusual back in the day. They would intentionally not license a frequency so that it wouldn't show up in police call. So sneaky, dubious legality, but it was something that they did back in the day.
Yeah, going to be very
nowadays
problematic if somebody else licenses. They have to get off the frequency.
Yeah, that's a risk you take. Nowadays they just put encryption on it, but back then,
yeah. I mean, but you're gonna know, if they tell them to go to channel 3 and it's not listed anywhere. So guess what? The scanner enthusiast is gonna do is gonna put in a search range and find it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And police call had a way of listing those frequencies, even if they weren't licensed back then. So Brian in Iowa worked at a corn processing plant, and they had their own rail cars and switch crews, and they weren't allowed to kick the cars, though. So a lot of grain elevators, processing plants and stuff would have their own switch engines, either switchers or, retired road units. Like back in the day, it used to be GP7s and GP9s, and nowadays it's SD40s. And are the popular industrial switchers these days, but you still see a lot of old EMD, Alco, and GE switchers at industrial plants. And some of the places would have those, or they would have trackmobiles, which were basically tractors with railroad wheels to move cars around the plants. And they run them for an hour once a day or so, and they were fine for doing that. You drive along Highway 30 through Iowa and Nebraska along the Northwestern and the UP tracks, and every other town has got an old switcher or road unit there to switch the local grain elevator. Donnie used to have an unit in Bearcat 898T, and it had tone search. So back in the day, nowadays the scanners will automatically display the decoded PL tone right away. But back in the day, that was unusual. So if you wanted to find a PL tone, you'd have to have a scanner that had that capability. And the 898 was one of the first ones that did. And then it would have tone search so you could find the PL tone. On the original scanners that had PL tones, like the Bearcat 760, what we would do is if you're trying to find the PL tones or using a frequency, you'd program that in 38 times, once with each PL tone, and scan until they talked, and then you would find out what PL tone they were using.
The crazy things that we used to do to be able to get things like that.
Oh yeah. Well, one of the things that we bought is we had these. They were actually repeater controllers, and I'm trying to remember the name of the company that made them, but they were a big white box, yay big, and this great big, 1.5-inch tall LEDs, and they were designed as repeater controllers, but you could hook a radio to it and it would display the decoded PL tone. And I had one of these things, and I just can't remember the name of the company that made them. If somebody else does, but let us know. But they were really, really cool because it would display not only PL tones, but DPL codes and DTMF tones. And it would decode it right off the air. And they were expensive. They were about $400 or $500, but they were great because you could also connect it to a two-way radio and transmit those tones if you wanted to. So I do that on ham bands instead of buying a radio that already had PL tone capable because they were more expensive. I had one of these, so I could, if I knew the PL tone of that repeater, I could just use it. You know, it wasn't CSI and it wasn't ComSpec. It was a big, huge white box, had a touch tone type button pad on it, and a great big LED display. And I just don't remember the name of it, but it was intended as a repeater controller. All righty. So Don's checking in from Bermuda. Glad hurricane season's over, I hope, for you down there. So Joe's writing Stargate spawned. There was 10 seasons of Stargate. Yep. And then there was Stargate Atlantis for 4 seasons and Stargate Universe for 2. So Zetron, that's what it was, is a Zetron. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. So those were cool. And those were, and a couple of us in the Chicago area had those things. They were great. So, see, Cozy TV has got Emergency, and Me TV has got Adam 12. That was another show that I liked to watch back in the day. And they were, those were both Jack Webb shows. So sometimes those guys would interact with each other. So Engine 51 and Squad 51, one of the show pieces for each of those are in the LA County Fire Museum, or the LA Fire Museum anyway. And the station in Carson, I think was station 127, really, but they called it 51 because there was no station 51 at the time. But now there is a station 51, and it's on one of the movie lots. And so that's what they've done out there. So, yeah, so, yeah, it actually was station 127, but they just call it station 51 for the show. Yeah, there are a couple of the guys that were on the show. That was the real name, Mark Lopez and Mike Stoker. So Mike Stoker was the driver and engineer for Engine 51, and he really was a firefighter. Captain Stanley, I think, was the officer on a couple of the season. He was really a fire department captain, and Mark Lopez was a firefighter. And so those guys, they used their real names on the show. And a couple of the guys got hired because not because they were particularly good actors, but because they had actors union cards or SAG cards and could drive a fire truck. So they wouldn't have to hire a Teamster and put them in a fire uniform to drive the truck. These were actual guys that knew how to operate a fire engine or a ladder truck and had a SAG card so they can do that. So,
did you watch the movie Beverly Hills Cop?
Is that Eddie Murphy?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Do you remember the captain that was in Detroit?
Yes, Gary Hill or Guy Hill or.
Yeah, he is an actual Detroit, captain. So I mean, when he read Eddie Murphy, his character Axel Foley, the Riot Act is probably exactly how he would rep a new one to one of the officers.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, his last name was Hill, I think. And I remember that guy. He was really good. He was believable because, and we didn't know at the time, but he really was.
Yeah,
what he was. So
you remember the scene down in the locker room. I mean, he friggin' was, when the Beverly Hills Cop, the first movie, Axel took a truck that was loaded with cigarettes, and then which was already impounded because it was evidence, and took it out and spilled cigarette cartons all over the place. It destroyed a half a neighborhood.
Yeah, that was a great chase scene. It was one of the best chase scenes back in the day, and that's when they really did them for real instead of using CGI. So, Todd asks if anybody in ham radio still uses Packet anymore. Boy, I don't know. I imagine there's probably some guys out there still using Packet. We had a Simplex channel that we used to hang out with on 2 meters back in the day, and there were some Packet operators that we used to have issues with back and forth. So Packet was, for those who don't know, was a way of sending digital messages over the radio. And you would send a packet of information, and it would be decoded by a decoder or a computer program on the other end. So some guys would use computers, other guys would use special decoders or encoders. So, and APRS is one of the outgrowth of packet radio. APRS is automatic position reporting system. And so if you ever listen to 144.39 and hear data bursts, that's APRS. And you would have a radio connected to a GPS, and the radio would transmit your location every so often. So if you want everybody in the world to know where you are, it's basically a geo-tracker back in the day. So Steve, back in the day, yeah. So his scanners as a young lad got him started in the fire and EMS industry. So he just retired after 40 years as a battalion chief outside of Cleveland. So, yeah, you worked for a living there, Steve. Same thing. I got a scanner when I was, I don't know, 8, 9 years old. My dad brought it home for me. And, I listened to that thing for all the time. Basically listened to him working as a police officer. And then got on the fire department when I was 18 and then started dispatching for a police department not long after that, and did that for 30-something years. Okay, so Dave, worldofradiohistory.com. So, yeah, that's the website that you can get PopCom and Monitoring Times, as well as many other different radio magazines. You can download them, you can read them online. So, and let's see here. Yeah, the original tone search on the scanners, Joe writes, was really slow, like 2 tones per second. So the way it worked back then is you would program the frequency, put it in the tone search, and it would check tone.
And hope they would talk
line. And by the time they got to the tone, they were already done, So, yeah. So nowadays it works great. In fact, I talked to a buddy of mine who was looking for a scanner, and he asked that very question, how the tone search works. And nowadays, especially with the Uniden and the Whistler scanners, you can program in that frequency with tone search, and as soon as they talk, bam, it's displaying the PL tone or the DPL code right away. And it works so much better these days.
Oh, I don't miss those days. That was grueling.
Oh, yeah. Of course, yeah, scanners... Yeah, scanners didn't have PL tones built into them back then.
Yeah, and then when they had it, it was that method, and it took for you come on, keep talking. Yes,
got him finally. Yeah,
yay, woohoo.
So Anthony writes, or is it Anthony? Depending if he's from New York or Boston, it's Anthony, right? So how many scanners can you connect? Can you wire up to one antenna? So, yeah, you can use a splitter or you can use a multi-coupler. So if you want to do it cheap, you can get a splitter. If you want to do it right, you get a multi-coupler. And basically a multi-coupler is a fancy splitter with an amplifier so that you don't have the loss that you would get with a splitter. So we saw the Stridsberg's 4-port, 8-port, and 16-port multi-couplers. And they have BNC connectors for the inputs and outputs. And basically you plug your scanner antenna into the input of the multi-coupler, and you have 4, 8, or 16 outputs that you can use for other scanners. So in my cabinet, I've got 2 8-port splitters and 2 4-port splitters, multi-couplers. They're all Stridsberg. And then I've got an 8-port on the back of my desk stack as well to take care of all these scanners. So basically, I effectively have 2 good scanner antennas in my attic, 1 on the desk, 1 in the cabinet, and it works really well. So we were talking about the tone panels before. CSI, I actually have a CSI decoder. Communication. CSI. That's the decoder on my 8500. I don't know if you can see it with the brown front on it, the little red LED display.
Yep, so, and you're wearing shorts, which is good.
Yeah, and I'm wearing shorts. Yes, thank you. So, yes. So yeah, that's my decoder there in the rack, and then and ComSpec had a neat thing that a couple of us had. It was a little plastic box with a dial on it, and that dial, you could dial in whatever PL tone you wanted, and that was a great way to transmit a PL tone. So I had a 2-meter radio in my vehicle that didn't have PL tone in it. It was an older radio, and I wired this into it, and I could dial in any PL tone I wanted. So 107.2 was the popular PL tone for 2 meters in the Chicago area. So that's where that usually went. And then Zetron was the name of the decoder I had. And I don't remember the model number of it, but boy, that thing was great. Let's see here. Ron remembers watching Firehouse.
Oh, God. Just the comments.
Yeah, there's some good ones here. Firehouse Chopper 1 on ABC. A lot of radio communications on that. And let's see here. Yeah. Dale writes, this was a good one. Josh said he likes Chips. That was a pretty good show. I didn't watch it religiously, but I did watch it occasionally. And then Dale writes that the radio dispatchers for M12 and emergency were real LAPD and LAFD dispatchers. So the guy that dispatched for emergency, he actually became very well known in the industry, and he was a LA Fire Department dispatcher, and he worked there for many, many years. And I think he's passed away since then, but that guy was really famous, and he was really good. And I've heard tapes of him dispatching. In fact, you used to be able to listen to him on low band back in the day too. And Gil Hill, that was the name of the guy from Beverly Hills Cop. Yep. And he was also on the city council in Detroit. So, but Gil Hill was the guy's name. So APRs are still used occasionally. That's packet based. I still hear that every once in a while out here. That's a common thing for me to get when I go to a ham fest. I'll get close call hits on as I'm driving through the parking lot because everybody and their brothers using APRS out there. Did you see the news about the ISS new radio setup? So the International Space Station apparently has some sort of a new radio setup. Did you see anything about that, Jonathan?
No, I haven't.
Okay. So we'll have to check that out and see if we can find that. Chris says he put a picture on our Scanner Guys page. We'll have to check that out. Gene says multi-couplers are awesome. Yep, especially since I sold you one. So Anthony says, thanks for answering this question. So I'll look it up. So, yeah, go to scannermaster.com and look at the Stridsberg multi-couplers. You'll like that. It's illegal to wear long pants with a Hawaiian shirt. Yes, it is, and I am following the law.
Yeah, don't show us too much leg.
No, that's as much as you're going to get, guys.
I got something to say. I'm pretty dark for the most part. You being down there in sunny Arizona, you got some pale white legs.
Yes, I do.
SPF 110 by the pool?
No. Actually, since we're in the water, when we're in the pool, you don't get tanned, and it's too hot to spend much time outside in the sun. So I actually get more tanned in the wintertime because we're outside more. In the summertime here, we hibernate inside in the air conditioning. So
it's wintertime.
Yeah. I mean, it's dark outside, and it is still 95 degrees, and the high today was 104.
I could see that it's dark over there.
Yeah.
I can't see the pool anymore. Well, I mean, you can turn on the lights for me.
Well, actually the pool light is on. It comes on a schedule. Comes on at 7 and goes off at 9. But since it's dark in the lot, my camera reverts to black and white when the light level goes down, so you can't see it. If the camera had enough light, it would be in color, and you can see how the pool water looks blue because we got blue lights in the pool. We bought one of those LED multicolor lights for the pool, and you can change the different colors. The problem is the remote control. The light is a foot and a half, 2 feet underwater, and the remote control won't reach to the light through the water. So there you have to go to where the wiring for the light is to use the remote control. So it's goofy. We didn't want to spend the $600 or $700 extra for the controlled light that we could have bought with the pool to use on the pool controller. It was too expensive, so we bought this light for $150. It was a lot cheaper.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So let's see here. So Captain Stanley was Mike Norrell. He actually was a captain in the Army, and Engine 51 was last in service in Yosemite National Park. So there were a couple engines that were used over the years, and one of them is in that museum. One was used in the national park, and I've actually seen that one when I went to Yosemite years and years ago. I imagine it's no longer in service, obviously, but fire engines will last 25, 30 years. And after it was donated by the producers because they owned the engines. The way emergency worked is they owned the engines for Station 51, the engine and the rescue squad. And they did, and when they needed additional equipment, oftentimes they would rent or had some sort of deal with the LA County Fire Department to provide them equipment, the second, third engines and big, or when they had big fires and stuff like that, they'd have extra stuff and they would rent those from the fire department. And a lot of those guys were actually being staffed by real firefighters. So Josh is asking if we sell any SMA to BNC adapters for the G5 pager. So the G5 has got an SMA connector on it.
It's the opposite of the scanners.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it's a reverse SMA. So the adapters that we have don't work on those. You can get those adapters out there, but it's what we call a reverse SMA, very similar to what they use on Motorola radios as well. So we don't have those adapters, but you can get them out there. So apparently the space station has a crossband repeater. So I've never worked that.
You never been up in the space station?
No, I have not. I've been to shuttle launches. Yeah. My buddy Scott and I went down to Florida for a shuttle launch back in 93. No, 93, mid 90s. We went down there for a shuttle launch, and I was going to go out to Edwards to try and catch the shuttle returning, and I was actually in the car going on my way out there. Then I heard on the news that they were going to land in Florida, so there was no point in me going to there. So because I happened to be in Phoenix at the time. So the space station has got a repeater on now. So listen to 437.8. So I'm going to put that into a scanner now. So listen in on 437.8, and if you hear something on that, it's likely the International Space Station. So thanks, Chris, for that. We appreciate that. Oh, gee. Yeah, so January, February, I have to do our broadcast from the pool.
Well, maybe I'll come out there and join you.
There you go. We do require swimsuits in our pool, so.
Yes, I imagine, I don't think your neighbors would appreciate the buff.
No, I got a notice from my homeowners association. I'm no longer allowed to skinny dip.
Yeah.
Of course, I tried that in the community pool, and they really did not like that.
Oh, they frown upon that.
Oh yeah. That's probably why I'm no longer allowed in the community pool.
Yeah. Long as you don't drop off Mr. Brown.
Yeah. Yeah. So Joe asks if who owned that old fixer-up engine that they had out back on some of the shows. So there was a story arc on Emergency of Johnny and Roy bought an old fire engine to fix up. And I don't know the provenance of that particular piece of apparatus. So if anybody knows, go ahead and let us know. Yes, too much information. Yes. Yeah. Yes. But that's why you are so glad that I am wearing clothes today. So
Yes.
you do not want to see this boy naked.
No.
Um,
Your wonderful wife is the lucky one.
Even she doesn't want to see me naked anymore. There was a song by some redneck group, and I think they called themselves the Rednecks or something like that. It says, "I don't look good naked anymore." I don't think I ever have, but
Well,
yeah,
she married you, so.
yeah. Well, yeah, but that was 150 pounds ago. So, Gene asks, "What's the best way to manage multiple scanners with Sentinel?" So, if you have got more than one radio that uses Sentinel, well, let's look at it this way: if you've got a 436, a 536, an SDS 100, and/or an SDS 200, all of those use the same version of Sentinel. So, if all you want to do is share favorites lists, not a problem. You have one group of favorites lists, and then when you write to the scanner, all those favorites lists gets written to your radio. I've got 3 536s, I got a 436, and I've got an SDS 100 and 200, and I just use the same favorites lists in all the radios, so I just write them all to it.
You can, Gene, through the settings, select what favorites lists do get imported into the radio. Mm-hmm. And then if you do own a home patrol and you make this phenomenal list with your software, you can export it out and import it in on the other Sentinel software. That's a great thing. We are actually going to be hosting a show that's just going over Sentinel software. It's just going to give you the basics, and we're also going to give you some hints and tricks. That's going to be coming up in an upcoming broadcast. So we're definitely going to cover that. But very good question. But you could do like Rich said. You just import all in the favorites list, or if you just want particular favorites lists, so you're not scrolling through 10, 20 favorites lists, you can just put in a couple onto that radio.
On my thing, I keep it pretty simple. I've got the same favorites lists on all of my X36 type radios, and it makes it easier for me to keep track of that. And I just turn on the ones I want, turn off the ones I don't want. I have a couple in the car that I use all the time, the railroad and the aircraft ones for sure. And I just turn those on, and I turn off the other ones that I want. So,
and that's the same thing with my radios here.
Yeah.
I have several of the same radios. And the reason of doing that is having, let's say you have something going on, you want to monitor the police end of it and the fire end of it. Now that you have that favorites list in 2 different radios, you can turn it on the other radio and lock down on 2 channels that may have been on one scanner in your, that you were running on one scanner on that particular favorites list.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, if you got a 436, a 536, or an SDS, all of those radios use the same version of Sentinel. If you've got a Home Patrol 1 or Home Patrol 2, there is a separate version. We call it the brown version of Sentinel, and that works on the Home Patrol 1 and 2. The green version works on the others. And while the files are not directly compatible, like Jonathan said before, you can export from one to the other. And all right, so we got a little bit more information about the engines used on emergency. So on the older, the first couple of years, they had a Crown engine, which was a manufacturer's, and those are the ones with the more of a rounded version, and it was called a Crown Fire Coach, I think is what the name was, and it had an open rear, it had a windshield but no roof. And those were the original ones, and that was the ones you would see leaving the fire station. And a lot of times you'd see one engine leaving the fire station, and they'd arrive in a totally different style engine because they had a few stock shots that they used for responses. And then later on, they bought a newer engine, and then they used that for a lot of the shows, and they reshot a lot of the stock footage with the newer engine. And they also used Universal Station number 60 for that. So The Crown engine was 127, which was the one from that Carson firehouse. And then Randy writes, same Randy, that the engine that was at Yosemite is now the one in the LA County Fire Museum. So that was the one that we used for most of the filming on the show. And that was the one with the enclosed cab and the more kind of squared. And I don't know if that was emergency one or what manufacturer that was. So they use a lot. And Randy said, yeah, they used a lot of stock footage. So they had like 2 or 3 shots that they would use for leaving the firehouse, and one to the right and one to the left, and then one to the right with both units, the engine and the squad, and one to the left with the engine and squad. So basically, that was the same shots used for that, and you can see the same car in the background on every one of those shots. And then they would have a couple stock footage for engines that were, or for engines and for the rescue squad. So they would just have a couple stock shots for that. So Ward LaFrance, that was the later engine with the squared cab and the covered cabs. So Donnie asks, why would you want an engine with an open top? Remember, this was filmed and covered in L.A. So there was in L.A. the weather is much more amenable to riding outside. So it was not unusual to have open coaches, and it was called a fire coach, I think was the name of the engine from Crown. And that was pretty common back in the days. Nowadays, everything is enclosed. Even when I was on the fire department, we had an enclosed cab for the driver and the engineer and the officer, but the firefighters riding in the jump seats and back, that was open. So there was no enclosure on that. And then we even, when I was on the fire department, we even had guys that would ride the rear step and try doing that when it's 20 below zero in a snowstorm in the Chicago area. So that was, and nowadays they don't let guys ride the rear step anymore. And most of the fire engines have fully enclosed cabs where all the firefighters are inside instead of riding on the outside. Ward LaFrance was the manufacturer of the other ones. When I was on fire department, we had Emergency One and we had Ward LaFrance, and there were a couple other manufacturers of engines, but I don't remember what they were off the top of my head. Crown also made school buses, and the LA style school buses were the rounded ones versus the square ones, which were made by Robin or some other manufacturer. But yeah, Crown was a big school bus manufacturer, and and of course they made fire engines. But I remember it was Crown Fire Coach. I always thought that was a neat name. It looks like in the 80s is when they made tailboard riding. Now, I was on the fire department in the late 70s and early 80s, and we used to ride the back step all the time. And unless you were the officer, you rode outside. And I was only the officer a few times. Most of the time I was outside riding on the back. Seagrave and Pierce. Yeah, we had a Pierce engine on our fire department. We had a emergency one. I think it was another one of the manufacturers, and then we had a Ward LaFrance. Bluebird, that's what it was. Bluebird, yeah, that was the school bus manufacturer. So if you're in the Midwest, you ride a Bluebird school bus. When you're on the West Coast, you rode a Crown. And there's only one. There's a great state law in Illinois, which I imagine they probably have in other states as well. In Illinois, there's only one vehicle required by law to have a two-way radio, and that is a school bus. Now, I don't know if that's state law in any other state, but in Illinois, school buses were required to have two-way radios, and that was the only type of vehicle in Illinois that was required to have a two-way radio. And as far as I know, that's the only mention of two-way radio in the Illinois Vehicle Code. Yeah, Rampart was the UCLA Medical Center, and E1 was the manufacturer of the engines. We had some of those. American of France, and then Midwest and the East was all Bluebird school buses. So let's see what we got here. Well, that looks like we are kind of working towards the end of our comments there. So if you got any more comments, let us know. Also, make sure that you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe so that way you'll get a notification. Also, hit the notification icon so that you'll get a notification every time we do a video. And sometimes we'll do some special shows here and there. Remember, next week we will not be on Facebook. We will the video will be on YouTube only. All right, so Ron writes, Mack. I didn't know Mack did fire trucks. So apparently they did engines and trucks in Detroit. So there's Mack. I remember there was another manufacturer, and Will, you probably remember this one. What was the name of that big truck style one with the big fenders? I forget that manufacturer, but there was another one that there was some in the Chicago area, but I don't remember ever seeing any Mack engines. Did you, Jonathan?
I've seen a few of those, like out in like I've seen it, fire departments using them. But there's a lot of really, there's a lot of really cool manufacturers, and you follow them on Facebook or the other social media. And usually what they'll do is they'll post photos of the finished product. And, it's really cool to see some brand new engines. And I followed a couple of those accounts. Yeah. I've actually shared some of their posts on either the Scanner Master page or the Scanner Guys page, because, they look super, super cool, and they're very expensive. For a municipality to buy a fire truck.
Oh yeah, he's talking $500,000.
Yeah, you think of if they've got to replace a couple of trucks in the fleet, it could be $1 million just in equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there is a fire apparatus journal, and I don't know if they're still in print now or not, but that was the kind of like the fire buffs guide, and it was all about fire engines, fire ladder trucks. And other fire equipment. And I had a good friend of mine who lives out here in the Phoenix area who was one of their contributing editors, and he was big into that. He and I would go rail fanning a lot, and then every time we go rail fanning, we drive by a fire. So, we got to stop by and get pictures of their equipment. So, the last time I bought a fire truck, it was $350,000. So they're probably Chris says you're talking $500,000 now and $750K for a ladder. There was a fire department in southern Wisconsin, someplace, who they bought a brand new ladder truck, and it was I think it was their first new apparatus they ever had, and they brought it into the firehouse, and they said it's off limits, don't touch it, don't even look at it. It's not ready, not getting set up. And of course, one night, a guy took it out for a ride and wrecked it.
Oh my God!
And it was brand new, and I don't even think they'd filled up the hose bed yet. So
wow.
Yeah, when I was on the fire department, we bought a new engine. It was about $350,000 at the time, and it was something that we expected to last for 20 years. And I remember when they delivered that, we spent 2 days outfitting that with, filling up the hose bed, checking the pump, make sure it didn't leak, checking the foam injector, doing all the other stuff, and all the hundreds of pieces of equipment that would go into it. There was a cabinet just full of lumber that we used for chocks and cribbing. And there was the EMS cabinet, and there was the Scott Pack cabinet, and all the rest of the stuff. So, and we had one fire department. They bought a new engine, and when they got it when it was delivered to the firehouse. It wouldn't fit in the doors. It was too big to fit in the doors. They had to park it outside until they could get the front half of the engine, and then they could only back it in and pull it out. So they couldn't bring it in the back door because they couldn't modify the back door because of the way it was constructed. So the only way in and out was through the front door.
Oh yeah, so they had to go through backing it in, and they had to remember that truck couldn't go all the way through.
Yeah, yeah, and it was actually very common for fire departments back in the days when they were setting up fire tones and stuff like that to have to try to emulate the fire tones from emergency, so that they had that sound come out. And it was unfortunate that they used 2+2 paging in on that show, so it was kind of hard to make the same exact tones go out because most of the fire departments by then were using 1+1. But there were a lot of fire departments that would have the same tones as emergency just because of that. So Ron's writing Bay County, Hampton Township calls have firefighter squads, and one of them is Squad 51. So we had, when I was still in the police department, one of the fire stations on our regional fire dispatch was Station 51, and the guys used to have fun with that. So yeah, that guy no longer works for the fire department. Yeah, he yeah, taking out the rig when you're not supposed to, and then that's bad enough. That would get you fired right there. But wrecking it, yeah, forget it. So, well, I think we are about the end of it, my friend.
All right, so let's go over some business end of things, and we'll wrap up the show for this evening. Let me just get the slideshow warmed up here. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
We want to remind you that our sponsor is Scanner Master. So if you have any scanner questions, it's best to email support@scannermaster.com. That's support@scannermaster.com. If you'd like to talk to us, give us a call, 1-800-722-6637. That number again is 1-800-722-6637. We're open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. You can, of course, always shop Scanner Master 24/7 at scannermaster.com. And stupid scanner tricks and your shack photos, particularly your mobile shack photos. We are looking for those. Send us your shack photos. The Scanner Guys at gmail.com. The Scanner Guys at gmail.com. Next broadcast for us is Wednesday, October the 7th, Traveling with a Scanner. We're going to feature some of those mobile shack photos along with those mobile shack antenna setups as well. That'll be 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here exclusively on the Scanner Guys YouTube channel. Train Aficionado Live, which will air just before that show on Monday, October the 5th. Scanners for rail fans, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. That'll be live on our sister channel, Train Aficionado. Make sure you head over there and subscribe there as well. And here's our programming for the next month. Of course, we mentioned the show on the 5th and the 7th. And then we'll have a bonus show live from the Altoona area, Friday, October the 9th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, live on the Train Aficionado YouTube channel. They'll be live from the Altoona area. My dad and I will be out there rail fanning. We'll be broadcasting from Glitzen. And several great shows coming up for the remainder of October. The 14th, we have a very, very special interview with a guest that most of you know. We will announce that very soon. And we have on the 21st, Classic Scanners. And then, of course, on the 28th of October, Ask the Scanner Guys. Everybody's favorite with Ask the Scanner Guys, fun with the Scanner Guys. So that'll be on the 28th. And then November will be Trains and Movies. We're going to rate them, how rail fans would envision how the trains were portrayed in the movie. We actually have a rating system, which we'll reveal during that show. And then November 4th, we're going to be talking Sentinel software. So definitely a great month and of programming. And of course, we're going to start off October with some really good shows as well. So make sure you mark your calendar, set reminders on your phone. Make sure you join us each and every week right here on the channel. And then make sure you follow, like, and subscribe to the Train Aficionado social media. You can follow it on Facebook, our YouTube channel, Instagram, and Twitter at Train Aficionado. And then, of course, you can read the blog at trainaficionado.com. Follow, like, and subscribe to our social media as well at the Scanner Guys at Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And don't forget our sponsor. You can follow, like, and subscribe to their social media as well, Scanner Master at Facebook, Twitter, and, of course, YouTube. And as always, Scanner Guys are brought to you by Scanner Master.
You betcha. And how many people here on the show, you got to be honest, how many people here have had the Station 51 tone set up as their ringtone for messages? I know I did for a while. I actually had it as my email notification when I was still working.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, it was always fun. We had a guy who was a huge White Sox fan, and I would set his email notification to, Cubs here, go Cubs, go.
Well, I know you pulled that prank on him.
Oh, yeah, he was not happy about that. So, sorry, Chief, I won't do that again. So, all right, well, hey, Jonathan, it was a great show tonight. Had a lot of fun, and I'm sure all of our fans out there had fun, and we will be back at it next week.
Yeah, we'll be back at it right here on the YouTube channel, so make sure join us on Monday night for Train Aficionado Live, and then that's on the Train Aficionado channel, and then join us back here on the Scanner Guys YouTube channel for another great show. Have a good night, everybody. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
And I'm Rich Carlson.
Have a great evening. We'll see you on Monday.
Later, guys.